Hello, there are a couple of people who need to be let into the panel, Hava and also Olivia Merrill. Also Coach Christie as well.
How you doing, Peter?
I'm doing well, sir. I hope you were as also.
One day at a time. and obviously it gets even shorter sometimes. Cool. I see the Q&A block is up. It's a nice feature up along the top. It's interesting when you use different devices, you get different pieces, and I updated all of the software, so.
Maybe I should do the same.
Because Zoom has a Q&A feature next to the mic now.
Yes, I can see that, but I'm not getting any cue or anything. To what?
Oh, somebody just did one.
Yeah. You guys are live. Yes, we're always live. Thank you, Michelle.
Hey, Coach.
Hey,
are we inviting in the select board into our panel since they might have questions, or are they audience today?
We hadn't really, addressed that. We were primarily looking at, providing an opportunity for discussion around the project and hearing from the project designers, but having that community piece for everyone. We might determine that we might need to do that later on in the process, but the primary focus is the effect that it has on the school community.
And Coach, I think I just added, we got to be careful, because if we invite them in, it gives a perception of a joint meeting.
Well, that's the other. That's the other piece. They didn't warn their meeting, so they're here as the public. It creates a technical problem, I guess. So, do you think we're?
I'm not seeing
ready?
The auditorium at all. Or is Roy it?
You mean the town hall?
Town hall, I'm sorry. Yes. It's just black.
I've never looked better than Peter.
Oh, come on. You're a fine figure of a man.
Oh, golly. I am now, but we'll wait till the meeting's over.
Yeah, really. It might be a whole nother ball game after that. Okay, folks.
Give us a second, Coach.
Give us a second, Coach.
Okay.
The infamous technical difficulties.
Can you see us?
Oh yeah.
We can now.
Okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. You're ready, Coach. We're ready.
Okay. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to our monthly community engagement meeting of the Hartford School District. As we have in the past, our community engagement team has put together different topics that we feel important for the board and the community to have discussions about. So at this point, I'd like to introduce our board clerk and community engagement co-chair. He and Hava Walter are our community engagement, team. So at this point, Russ North will give us some opening comments about tonight's community engagement meeting. You have the floor, Russ.
Thank you, Coach. On behalf of the school board, we would like to thank the members of the public, both in person and online, for their attendance tonight, and the representatives of St. Paul's Church, the Haven, and Twin Pines Housing Trust for agreeing to participate in tonight's meeting. School board's reasons for inviting the project's representatives to our January community engagement meeting are: 1, to learn about the project; 2, discuss their potential impacts on the 4 schools in proximity to the projects; 3, provide the public about information on the projects; and 4, allow Hartford residents to ask questions and voice their opinions regarding the project's potential impacts on the community and schools, approximately 1,800 students and employees of the remaining 5 schools in regional programs in Hartford. It will be appreciated if all questions or concerns are raised in the context of potential impact on the school community. The board will not be acting tonight. This is an informational meeting. Any potential future actions will be discussed in an upcoming meeting. As the body with the ultimate responsibility for the operation of the school district takes very seriously its obligation to model the behaviors we expect from our students and employees in their dealings with others. Our ends policies, available on the district's website, communicate our mission and the qualities we work to install in our students before they graduate. 2 of these policies, number 3, citizenship, and number 3.1, global awareness, call for skills in understanding citizenship, its essential qualities, and the appreciation of economic, political, and cultural changes occurring at a global scale and how these changes impact our communities. In tonight's meeting, we intend to demonstrate the skills called for in both policies by leading by example. Understanding that any public forum can become heated and emotional, we expect all participants to act appropriately, treat others with respect, to refrain from personal attacks, respect the rights of others to have differing opinions, and understand in the end, it's okay to disagree. Now I will go over some of the ground rules of tonight's meeting, just so there's no question. There are obviously people here and people online. During the meeting, board members have the right to speak, react to information throughout it. Well, every effort will be made to accommodate all attendees. Priority will be given to Hartford residents. If time permits, other parties may be allowed to speak absent the people we're presenting. All participants must identify themselves and their towns or residents before speaking. Depending on the volume of questions, we're going to alternate in person and then online. But that may be changed based on the number of participants, either in person or online, asking questions. Again, we're going to treat this as much as possible as a public meeting if we're all in attendance. Virtually, individuals who wish to speak must indicate their desire to speak by raising their hand, and must indicate, when called on, their name and city of residence. Once recognized, individuals will be invited into the meeting and allowed to make a statement or ask questions subject to the time limitations, which are: people are allowed 3 minutes for opening questions or comments. You are encouraged to ask all your questions up front, and then there will be a response. After that response, you will be given 1 minute to respond in case you don't feel your questions were adequately addressed. You will be given a 30-second warning when your time is approaching, and you'll be allowed to finish your sentence, but not continue after that. Everyone who wishes to speak will be given a chance to do so before any individual can speak again. Depending on time constraints, individuals may not get a chance to speak a second time. If there are no more questions from one group, either virtual or online, we'll take the remaining questions from whatever forum as well. An announcement will be made when giving everyone who has not yet had a chance to speak, the chance to speak before an individual will be allowed a second chance. We reserve the right to determine when the meeting will come to an end. An announcement will be made prior to adjourning the meeting, and we reserve the right to moderate operation of this meeting if necessary, and to stop or limit an individual's participation if their behavior is deemed inappropriate. And the other thing I will say is we will listen to the participants presenting, then we will take questions. So make note of any questions. That will give them a chance to do their entire presentation and make sure they get the message out that they want to portray. And at this point, are there any questions about what I've gone over? Hearing none, I will invite our presenters to come up. Please go to the microphone and identify yourselves so people online can understand who's speaking.
Take my mask off.
Yes, that's fine.
Hi, my name is Virginia Umland. I live in Wilder. I am a member of St. Paul's Episcopal Church and a member of the vestry. And I just wanted to tell you a little bit as to how St. Paul's kind of got to where we're at today. Just to go back a little bit, St. Paul's has a very long history of being involved with the community and being involved with concerns about those who are unsheltered and housing issues in the Upper Valley. We were involved with the formation of the Haven back about 40 years ago. We were one of 5 churches who were involved in that process. We worked with we supplied a physical building for the Good Neighbor Health Clinic for many years, until they moved to their current location. We currently recently work with the Haven. We did it on our own pre-COVID. We were providing some on Sunday mornings, food, breakfast, and warmth and socialization to those who are unhoused in our community and those who were interested in joining us. We provided this service on Sunday mornings before our 10 a.m. service, and sometimes work with the Haven in providing food and lunches for folks to take home. And it was a real heartbreak for us to turn those folks out when we had to close up our doors around noontime, because we all know how cold it is in January and February, and can speak to that now very well. Other community involvement we've had has been, have provided space for the Listen community dinners. And we also were really actively involved with the Tropical Storm Irene relief efforts for a year after that storm blew through here. We provided a lot of support to our community. And just about everything St. Paul's does, we have the mission of support for our community. Be it our bargain bin, which is what hasn't just been a fundraiser for us, but has been a means of providing things that people need around us. And we always have some great stories, but it's always a great concern for us as to what we can do to help those around us. And the issues of those who are unsheltered and housing needs in the Upper Valley have been a concern of ours for several years. We were never in the financial situation to address those concerns on our own, which is how a year, 2 years ago, a few years ago, we started talking to the Haven on a joint, could we work together in some manner? And that led to inclusion of Twin Pines. And the 3 three entities have worked very closely together, hashing out ideas, things that how we could provide services, and how we could be involved as a parish, and have come up with a proposal that we are, as a parish, overwhelmingly supportive of. And the Vermont, if I get this right, the Diocese of the Episcopal Church of Vermont has given their support, and our bishop is very supportive of these discussions. It allows St. Paul's to continue their mission of, if this proposal goes forward, to continue to address our concerns of the needs of those who are unsheltered in our community, and working with those who are in housing and what we can do. And we also, when we talk about this project, we are very excited because we come up with a list of ideas as to how we can provide support to these communities. And I think that was just a mention of our history a little bit, of how we're interested in expanding our mission. And I think Twin Pines and the Haven can expand on that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Hi, I'm Michael Redmond. I'm the Executive Director of the Upper Valley Haven. I live here in Hartford. I've been in that role for not quite 3.5 years. Of course, the Haven has been around for a lot longer, 40 years, as was mentioned. And we provide a lot of services, as people know, food, shelter, supported housing, outreach to the community, particularly those who are unhoused or living close to the edge and have run into trouble. Children's programs, an after-school program, and a summer camp. And throughout our history, we've been working right on our campus here on Hartford Avenue in land that we originally purchased from the church and others that were there. And this is where we've been operating now a family shelter for 8 families, an adult shelter in a new building that we built back in 2010 for up to 20 adults, though during COVID, we reduced capacity to 10. And I mentioned the children's programs and next door at Bev's house. And in 2015, we began operating in the winter before I arrived, but an operation of a winter seasonal shelter. The idea that in our cold winters here in Vermont, it is best to provide shelter for anybody who needs it, who comes to our doors. And this is what's also called a low barrier shelter. And I know that this term is going to come up tonight, and we're happy to talk about why we've offered that. Low barrier means that someone could be inebriated at the time when they come in to the shelter in the evening. And the idea is that if they can behave, follow the rules that we have, which is getting along with everyone, can't be drinking in, you can't go outside to drink again or to use other drugs. And we have a pretty good record then of keeping people safe during the evening. And we ran that shelter, that low barrier shelter, during the winters, every winter from 2015 through 2020, in March, when COVID arrived here in Vermont. And at that time, I think the state of Vermont became very active in providing space in motels so that people could have a place to stay during the pandemic when they didn't have anywhere else, as a public health measure. And they've continued that to this day. And so we haven't operated a winter shelter last year nor this year. So let's talk about then, what are we proposing? You heard a little bit about this. Thank you to our friends at St. Paul's for making this opportunity available. That if under the plan, we would buy a piece of the land that would be where a new building would be developed right adjacent to our property. So that would allow us to just expand the current planned development, technical term that the town uses, that we already have, that has permission to operate the shelters that we have, including an adult shelter. And that's how this low barrier shelter would be described in planning language as an adult shelter. We're thinking that we want to be able to do a couple of things differently. Why are we doing this again? Say the pandemic is going on. Well, we were operating it out of our dining room in the space that we have in the burn building, a small room. Men and women would be in the same room. We'd have a curtain down the middle, not a lot of privacy, not much privacy at all. One shower available. Not what we call trauma informed at all in making it safe for everyone and leading to better behavior by everyone. And then as was mentioned in the mornings, that same space is then used by the food shelf and for registration and during the day. So we couldn't provide additional services during the day to people who might want them and might want to help work with us. And so our hope is that we can create a building that would have 2 floors, keep it simple on that. 1 floor would be for shelter. A little bit, maybe a few, we used to have 15 people a night in the shelter when we put everybody into our dining space. We're looking at about 20 beds, so a slightly larger space. And I won't go into the design features, that would be for the planning board and commission to take up. But the idea is that it's safer, there's more space, there's more service, more showers, more bathrooms, it just will work better for everyone, safer for us and our staff too. But then beyond that, during the daytime, we want to have a place where people can work on moving forward, not just in the immediate of a shelter for an evening, but to find permanent housing, because that's what we do. Even in this last year during the pandemic, we helped 93 households find permanent housing. And then if you know the housing market in this area, that's saying something. But we have people that work hard. We have a supportive community. One of our landlords that we work with very actively is Twin Pines. They're the best landlord in the region. And we've been able to do that. We want to be able to continue to do that. So during the daytime, people who want to work with us, they have a place to be. During the cold weather, we'll stay open so that people can stay inside and be warm. Again, the rules of you can't be drinking when you're on campus. You can't be outside on campus drinking either. So we're hoping that it will be a relatively safe space for everyone, including the community. Now, I don't control what people do when they leave campus, when they go up Hartford Avenue or down Hartford Avenue. But that's what we're intending for the work we do. And then during that daytime, people who want to work around finding a place to live will have resources to be able to do that. We can talk more about, but that's enough to give you a sense of where we've come from, what we've done in the past, and what we're really saying is we want to return to doing what we have done for 5 years of the low barrier shelter, but to be able to do it better. And that's our plan, but we'll be happy to answer questions about that. We're happy that we were able to provide a community meeting back in December to the neighbors. And I know that Russell was there. And so I see some of the other folks who were here. Happy to do this again. And there'll be more opportunity at the Planning Commission meetings in February, March, and April as well. So we welcome all the community input, including tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Winter. I'm Executive Director at Twin Pines Housing Trust. For those of you who don't know much about Twin Pines, we have a portfolio of about 550 multifamily units that serve a range of needs and range of folks in the community, from seniors to people who are transitioning or coming out of homelessness to what we call general occupancy housing, available without age restriction. And we also have a home ownership program, and we're proud to call Hartford home for a number of those folks who've been able to, through our support and support from the state of Vermont, be able to achieve the dream of home ownership in a really challenging market. We recently finished a large project here in Hartford called Wentworth, Sykes Mountain Avenue. And that included 21 units, finishing off a site that had previously been developed with 30 units. That project included a variety of unit types, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, and included a range of incomes. So within affordable housing, we have subsidized affordable housing, and we have affordable housing where incomes and rents are restricted, but people have to have sufficient income to be able to afford the housing. We had those different populations at Wentworth, but we also have folks who are making up to 120% of the area median income. So that's 94,000 for a family of four. Why? There's some funding available for that. And we also think there's a value to doing those kind of mixed income housing developments. But this is a different kind of project that we're looking at here. So we are looking to develop 18 units of housing. These would be 1-bedroom apartments, and they would be for folks either coming directly from the Haven, most likely, or who are coming through what's called the coordinated entry list, which is a state list of people in our region who are housing challenged. The majority of the folks on that list, something like 90% of the folks on that list right now, are, and it might even be higher, are individuals. We have done a remarkable job trying to address the issue of family homelessness. And projects like Sykes Mountain Avenue, Wentworth, have been part of the solution. Thanks to the work that we do with the Haven, we're able to get people in and keep them housed. It doesn't always work perfectly. There are failures, absolutely, but we've done a really good job of trying to reduce the number of homeless families and the impacts that those have, particularly on young folks in our community. This project with 18 units, though, is something that we are proud to bring forward because it's something that we've worked on with the Haven. 3 years ago, we opened, 3.5 years ago, we opened a project called Parkhurst in Lebanon, New Hampshire. Also 18 units, also for homeless individuals. 14 of the first 17 people moved in directly from the Haven, coming directly from the shelter. Somebody came out of their car. And I'm proud to say many of those people are still with us or have moved elsewhere in our portfolio. It really has been a success. And part of the success has been the partnership between Twin Pines and the Haven. And part of that's about what we call enhanced case management. Enhanced case management is where a case manager from the Haven is basically working one-on-one with individuals who live in that housing, connecting them with services, whether it's mental health services, addiction services, physical health services, whatever somebody needs to keep them housed is the kind of connections they're working to make, making sure that those residents don't fall through the cracks and helping them keep their housing. So that model has worked really well, but we've also learned some things from it. And that's part of the reason that we're interested in developing this housing on a portion of the St. Paul's campus. We want that housing near the Haven so that the Haven can provide services to the residents there who need it. The goal is to keep them housed, get people off the streets, get people into permanent housing. That is the goal. So the building, to just talk a little bit about it, would be 3 stories. Some people have expressed concerns about that. We look forward to hearing concerns. It's far less than the zoning in that area. It's actually 40 feet. I don't know if everybody knows that. This is a 3-story building that would be below that. We are going to be going through a planning process, and folks are going to get an opportunity to tell us what they like, what they don't, what they wish we change. We heard, as Michael said, a number of residents talk about issues and concerns that they had in December. And we tried to incorporate some of those concepts into what we're going to be sending forward to the Planning Commission in the coming months. We do have an application in right now. There'll be a hearing in February, but there'll also be additional applications that will be submitted for March and April. So there's going to be lots of conversations, lots of opportunities for people to be heard. And I look forward to hearing more of the concerns and questions that people have. And, you know, we'll get into some of the things that we've tried to do with the project to address concerns that we heard from abutters. Thanks very much for your time and attention.
Yes, thank you. All righty, now we'll start the CAS question/comment. And just because to eliminate the awkwardness, I'm gonna start volunteering people that have signed up. And excuse the informality, but I'm gonna use your first name because if I tried to pronounce some of these names, it might provide comic relief, but it would also be offensive perhaps to the individuals. So I'll start with Beth.
My name is Beth Demers. I live adjacent to the Haven. I'm fortunate to live in one of those little tiny log cabins that many people don't even know exist. There are 4 generations of us living on that street. My great-grandparents built most of the homes on that street. They also built the base building for Veremity, and they were very hard workers. My concerns, they were hard workers, and they wanted to create housing that was accessible. I would actually argue that they are the best landlords in the Upper Valley. Most people go and stay for many years, and my grandmother is still renting out some of those homes. I think my main concerns stem with the singles shelter, and partially because it is in proximity to so many schools, so many children, and many of those children actually live and utilize those programs which are at the Haven without any screening process for the folks that are there. It feels like people who are already vulnerable would be put in situations where they may become more vulnerable to people who are maybe on the sex registry or what have you. It's hard to know. And the other piece is that when they leave the shelter or when they're coming into the shelter, it leaves area folks at a vulnerability. We've had a lot of disturbance on our street. People pass through on our street rather than take Hartford. They are headed to the cemetery oftentimes to engage in activities which they cannot do at the Haven, whether it's using or meeting up with each other or what have you. And, I have actually called the police on a number of occasions. My house was vandalized, my car was vandalized, and people sat and ate underneath my overhang while I was sleeping, which was really upsetting. And someone left excrement in my backyard, which in a chip bag, which felt really disrespectful. I have to watch my child when she's playing outside. And I think that these are not unheard of events. They may be unheard of to the people with the project, but they're not unheard of by the people who live in neighboring communities. My hope is that if this project goes forward, that the family units can be fully supported. I also support the idea of having wraparound services, but as you said, Parkhurst has been extremely successful and is not on the campus. And my hope is that the adult shelters for individuals who are low and no barrier would be placed not within the
30 seconds.
Not within the immediate neighborhoods and in proximity to several schools within a mile's radius.
Would anybody like to respond to that? If not, if you say no, then we'll just move on to the next question.
Maybe, a few more.
Okay, that's fine.
Their patterns or other.
So, Mr. Hathorn, could you?
We're good.
No, good. Okay. So we'll move to Harry. Okay. Joe. I know you won't pass up an opportunity.
Since you were at the select board meeting yesterday, I thought I'd return the favor. Joe Major, White River Junction. I am the vice chair of the Hartford Select Board. For me, I am here more of a capacity of information gathering. I can see, and I'm not trying to be diplomatic about this, but I can see both sides. What I want to do more than anything is find a solution to this. It is going to be a situation tomorrow night where it's going to be 17 below zero. And we are going to have vulnerable people out there. And so how can we solve this? Your soliloquy was very poignant, and I absolutely understand. And it was very heartfelt. And so there must be a solution, because I understand what you go. And if I was a parent or a homeowner, I would be very disturbed at what you just said. So For me, it is information gathering. And I think, and I commend the school board for trying to find out what are the problems, but more importantly, what are the solutions to this? There has to be a solution to this because we cannot leave people to die out in the street, but the homeowners and the children in our community have to be safe as well. So that is a tall task, but we can accomplish that. We have accomplished much more in this community and much harder things, and we will do that. So thank you very much for your comments and thank the Haven for what you do. Michael, I know you have been under extreme pressure during the since this project has been taken on, but I will tell you, as a representative of the select board, we appreciate what you do and what you continue to do. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Joe, wise beyond his years. And reminded me of something that we can do and which we've started to do. And when I mentioned the community meeting we had when Beth and some other neighbors we gathered in St. Paul's Church and talked about the project. And it was like this, very respectful in exchange of ideas and comments. And Beth didn't point out that her work is working with people that are very much like the folks who come to the Haven. So she comes from a place of not being an angry neighbor, not being someone who's saying never, I don't want anything to do with these people, that she doesn't other them. She knows who they are and speaks about them with respect, but she has concerns which she shared. And the one thing that came up that evening that was really, to me, was a wake-up call was that she and a few others said, you haven't reached out to us before to talk about these problems. And I said, you're absolutely right, because I didn't know that you were feeling these problems to that extent. And so one of the promises I made that night that we said we would do is that we were going to keep the conversation going as well, so that there's always a forum. I said, you can always call me, and plenty of people do when they have concerns, but if you don't, then that's on me that I haven't extended a hand to you. And so we talked about that night. We would do that. We have a Twin Pines in the church and the Haven took that the comments we heard that last night, and we said we're going to continue communication. So we have a newsletter that's going out, and not just to the people that came, but to everybody that lives on both sides of Hartford Avenue, up and down the street, down to the high school and up to Bugby, where there's where all the streets are. And we're mailing it to everyone in there and just saying, here's what, make sure they know what's going on. Probably some of them may not have heard about it yet, the project. And so we're going to pick up some school parents, I'm sure, in addition as well. And we'll have, and then people of all ages, and some are renters and some are owners, but they want them to share them. And we've talked about some of the improvements that we think we're making to the project, reflecting some of the comments we heard. But also talk about another forum that we want to have. We'd like to have the Hartford Police Department come and to a meeting that we would have, again, to talk about what do we do if there are people in the neighborhood are doing really awful things, or when should we call? How do we engage with the others who may know better? Because we know people as individuals, and sometimes we can speak to them in that way too. And so that's this is one thing, is that I wanted to say that we are opening a dialogue, and we think that through that, Joe, that we can at least help focus on things, if maybe not solve all of our differences, but at least focus on the things that we can work on and continue to do that.
Thank you.
Did you add Christina Tardy? Thank you.
You're muted, Christina. Unfortunately, you're still muted.
Hi,
you go. Hello.
My name is Christina Tardy. I work for Town of Hartford, but I'm not here to represent Town of Hartford. I'm a resident. And I just want to ask the question, if this project is going to pursue property tax exempt status. So the residents of Town of Hartford know. That's all. Thank you.
Now, that's an easy one, so please keep them coming. This is a project that will be financed through something called the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program. This is a federal program. We'll be going out and getting those funds through the Vermont Housing and Finance Agency. And as part of that, we agree to pay property taxes. So Twin Pines pays north of $500,000 a year in property taxes to the communities that house their units, and that would include Hartford. So thank you.
The Haven, as a charitable organization, has pursued tax exempt on property, and we would continue to do that.
Any follow-up, Christina?
No, thank you. That's enough.
Okay. Danny?
Hello, I'm Danny Brzezowski. I live in White River Junction along Hartford Avenue near the Haven. And I'm also a teacher at the Hartford High School. And I'm here to voice my strongest support for this expansion of the Haven and the services that they can offer. The students at Hartford High School have a saying that we are all hurricanes. We strive to build a strong, inclusive community. And I think we, as a Hartford community, do our best to embody that. But strong communities mean we're stronger together when we mutually support each other. Having safe shelter at any time of year should not be contingent on an endorsed relationship status. It should not be contingent on economic privilege. Certainly, we can assist individuals into different types of housing based on economic ability that they have, but saying that because someone looks a certain way or experiences certain hardships, they should be disqualified from shelter is, I think, not a stance that we can take and also call ourselves a supportive community. As a teacher at the high school, I want to say that the work of the Haven and the proximity of the Haven is an asset to our school community. We have partnered many times every year on service projects. Many of our students have received shelter from the Haven or participate in the programs at the Haven. Housing insecurity does not discriminate based on age. And also, we should recall that many of our students would qualify for singles housing in this project. If we have a student who is 18 or older and unhoused for many reasons, this could be the place that allows them to continue to access school rather than dropping out or rather than ending up in the criminal justice system. And so I guess I'll leave with that point, but I do want to add one additional thought in response to Mr. Merce, and I do hear your concerns. I want to point out that
30 seconds.
Vandalism of property and disrespect of that property occur for many reasons. My house has also been vandalized many times, not by homeless individuals, but by more affluent individuals who object to my display of pride flag and Black Lives Matter signs. And so that is my contribution. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'm guessing That's the same hand. Okay. Deb.
Hi, my name is Deb Winslow, and I am a resident of White River Junction. We are on Wilder Street, which is one street parallel to Route 5. We basically look out our lawn and we can see the Haven. And I was also attended virtually the meeting that was held in December, and appreciate that we have another opportunity to ask additional questions, get more input. I do know that I have questions that are specific to the building design for the 3-story unit. Those don't seem like they should be addressed here, since this is more related to how is this affecting our school community. So I will probably hold most of those questions for the meeting February 14th. In conjunction with that, I will say that if people have, there is that meeting on the 14th that people can attend. If people would like to give input before that meeting with your thoughts on the issue, you can give those to Joanne Els at the zoning board by February 7th. And she will get those to the planning commission so that they can read those during the week and do their homework. Another thing I will say, which I didn't know much about this until I started learning the past few days, reading a lot, is that if you stand up like we're doing here tonight with Mike, give your name, all you have to give your name, where you live, and no matter what you say, once a decision is made by the planning board, if you have stood up at a previous meeting about that issue and stated your name, you can then appeal that decision. So it was just a piece of information that I thought would be good for everybody to know. I never knew that, which is helping me be an engaged citizen. I guess my question, my comments are more related than to I'm going to call it the emergency shelter with the low barrier. I too am not in support of a low barrier shelter at that location, and make it very clear, at our location. I am completely in support of it in a non-residential area. We've been here for maybe 15, 16 years. We've been living in that house. And I will say that over the years, since more services have been offered at the Haven, that's when we're seeing the increase in things happening in our neighborhood that are not desired. Which makes sense because they're the services that they can get during the day. So they're going to cluster in where you can get the services. I mean, logically, that makes sense. You know, I know several things have been explored with the last meeting. People
30
say, well, what about
seconds.
this area? What about this area? But I think we can come together better. Maybe now more community members can get involved, you know, explore more options for a location in Hartford that can have a low barrier shelter, emergency shelter, plus additional services, maybe a food pantry. So that area, they can still get what they need. But we don't have the concerns of people not being screened with our students walking around. If they're in that shelter during the day and then they leave, our students are walking back and forth with possibly sex offenders. We have no idea. And it's not just high school and middle school students. There's an elementary school at the bottom of the hill. So.
Excuse me, it's your time's up, unfortunately.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mary.
Hello, my name is Mary Bouchard. I'm a resident of Wilder, and I'm also a teacher at Hartford High School and have been for 27 years. And I just want to voice my support for the Affordable Housing and Services Initiative. And just want to say that I have partnered with the Haven for the 27 years or however many years. I've been at Hartford with students, and it's really a great opportunity for students to learn about how to support people in need, and in a compassionate and solutions-based lens. And so that's why I continue to commit to trying ways to partner. And I think that many of our students know the struggle of homelessness. They know the struggle of food insecurity. So it is nice for them to be able to participate in a way and see the resources side of things. And I think that's really critical. In my experience is that students who learn about and participate in the hard work that's happening in their community, they're more likely to continue that work outside and after high school. And we're really fortunate to have a resource within walking distance of our schools where they can learn those skills and see those experiences happening. I just think it's important that we raise citizens who don't shy away from difficult problems, but instead lean in and feel compelled to figure out some solutions to leverage their privilege to find some ways to help. So I support the expansion, and I hope to continue to partner with the Haven on all the resources that they offer.
Thank you.
Would you add Lori Dickerson?
You're still muted, Lori.
I'm trying. I'm trying. Hi, thanks for letting me speak here. I just a little bit of background because I know you have, a limited time and everything, but I literally grew up next door. I mean, my family moved in on Goodrow Street, in 1962. And like the Demers, we were there. I mean, we were there before St. Paul's built. So I used to pick strawberries because it was a community garden in that field. So I have many concerns about this, especially proximity to the schools. One, I just don't understand. I mean, having grown up there and knowing the kids in the area and everything else, I can, my father lived there just till this summer. I can attest to the problems once the adult shelter went in 2010, that the change in the neighborhood and everything else. And so this is a concern. This is not against the Haven and the work they do. The services from the actual original building of the Haven really didn't change the neighborhood at all. Once they built the shelter, yes, things started to change. And now, as far as what we're hearing about this low barrier shelter, that gives me great pause to have that in such close proximity to the schools and the neighborhood. I just don't think that this is, I think a better place could be found. And the other point that I want to kind of bring up is I would like to know, and maybe perhaps the director of the Haven can speak to this, is that, if there's with this low barrier shelter, do we know where these people are coming from? I mean, I hear rumors, and that's why I'd like facts that, people are coming from Connecticut. They hear that, the Haven has great services. So my concern is, especially with this, low, that we don't know the people that are coming in. It's one thing if they're Hartford residents or people who grew up in Hartford and they're on hard times, and yes, we need to try to help them as much as we can. But if people are coming in from Connecticut and Massachusetts and New Hampshire and, even from down country, they're getting on a bus in Bellows Falls and coming up because they say, the Haven's going to put me up for the night. And then I just have a concern about that kind of atmosphere and where all those people are coming
30
from.
seconds.
I'm done. Thanks, Roy.
Thank you, Lori. Would you like to get up? Sure.
Thank you, Lori. Good question. Where do people come from that use the Haven services? And they do come from the region. We look at the food shelf. There's people that come from around the community on both sides of the river because they might be coming up to go to the hospital, and this is a stop along the way, and they know that we're generous and that we're very friendly and we're not judgmental, and they come to get food. And most seniors, probably our largest group of folks who come visit, but they are geographically spread out a bit in the towns. The most are from Hartford. The second town is Lebanon. I mean, so it makes sense. Larger cities and towns and close by, but people do travel for a bit farther. The shelter, we see, some of the same patterns when you think about where our shelter is located. So there are, shelters in all over Vermont, in some of the larger communities, and Hartford is one of those. And so, but we do draw from. We are officially in our continuum of care model in Vermont, the northern Windsor County. So take north of the town of the city of Windsor, and then Orange County. That's our official geographic area, and most of the people are from there, from Vermont. And then we do get some from Lebanon, in Sullivan County, Grafton County nearby. Yeah, there's the occasional person that comes up from Massachusetts or who just dropped in from wherever. But there's a bit of that travel. People travel. They leave. They often then are heading back, and you might stay briefly and then go back to where they came from. But they ended up here, ran out of money. Their friend kicked them out. They thought they had an arrangement with their partner kicked them out. Sometimes not, pretty aggressively too. So there is it's not only Hartford. That's quite true. Majority are from this area, but the shelter systems in the state and in New Hampshire nearby are, you go down, down to Brattleboro, there's a shelter. In Rutland, there's a shelter. St. John's, there's a shelter. So Johnsbury. So those are, kind of the layout of nearby, and then across in not Charlestown, but what's the other city that's down? Claremont. Claremont is a shelter. So those are, and then Keene, down to Keene. So those are the shelters, and you're going to get some people attracted. The people who come, though, as I said, they are all ages. We say single, but sometimes couples come in as two singles, or married couple. In the last time we opened the shelter, they were there pretty much every night, and they were in their 60s, and that's and then there will be a group of mostly about 75% men, 25% women. And we say low barrier, so people to be inebriated. Not everyone is, half and half, something like that. It's just whoever needs shelter at that evening. We do not screen, mentioned earlier, do not screen people out other than their behavior. So the question is, could someone be a sex offender? It's possible for sure. Last I checked in Hartford, there were 3 people on the sex registry list. None of them were under close supervision. Doesn't mean someone comes in out of town or has some history in their past. But that's not the large population that we see. People that have had some mental health challenges, we're going to see a lot more of that. I mean, that's for sure. It can be loud, but they come to us because they trust us and they are pretty good with us. But when they leave, there can be some challenges for sure. But our goal is that through this program, that we're going to be able to provide more services for those people. We know them, and when they come in at night, we tend to know all of them. Maybe somebody new, but in the winter when I think about it. But they are, by and large, we've known them, and they want to, can you come back? They kind of depend on us. So they know if they don't behave according to the rules that we have, they wouldn't be able to see that. Now, in the other shelters, there is screening. And so there wouldn't be somebody who's a sexual offender, if that's a concern, in the Hickson building or in the Byrne building for the family shelter. So anyway, that's kind of the story where they're from.
Thank you. Would you like to add anything, Lori?
That's all Peter and Hannah.
No, I'm good.
Oh,
thanks.
okay. Go ahead, Lori, I'm sorry.
No, I said I'm good, but I see that Peter and Hava have their hands up, so now maybe they want to speak to that.
I was about to say that, yes. So we'll go with Hava first.
So I actually have my own questions. And so if Peter has a comment about the statement, I would defer to him. Go ahead and stay on topic.
Actually, the one thing I was hoping for was a clarification of exactly what low barrier means in this context. There's obviously a lot of concern around that issue. It's been stated that it means that people may enter the shelter if they are inebriated. And it also says that you are not doing any background screening. Are there any other ways in which a low barrier shelter is distinguished from a normal shelter?
If it's okay, Peter, if you don't object to this, I might actually piggyback my question on yours because I think they're interrelated. My question is, for any of the other services that are currently ongoing and have existed at the Haven, like food pantry, case management, clothing assistance, are those things zero barrier, or are those low barrier, or what is the barrier existing already for people coming into that services on an everyday basis?
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, all good questions. Maybe for Peter, the low barriers as you defined it, that someone could be inebriated when they arrive. And so there are other shelters that are dry. That's the difference. Low barrier and dry. Those are that tend to be the two. Some got to go pray. Salvation Army. There's an additional. I don't know if you have to, but they encourage prayer there, and that's because they're motivated by their faith. We are non-denominational, even though we were founded by 5 churches and have close affiliation with St. Paul's. I'm sure they'd be happy if we prayed more. But we that's low barrier for us, and it means, as we said, it's a focus on something called harm reduction. What's the thing we can do that will cause the least harm or protect people? And that's when we think about the weather, that inviting people in, not setting up barriers to get in, is the least harm we can do in that moment. And we also, it has the kind of the benefit of you get to know people. And we have, stories won't tell, but of, people that takes a long time for them to figure out where they want to go. The motto of the Haven is hope and possibility. And so sometimes it takes a long time for either of those to really emerge. But sometimes they do. And we have some really wonderful stories about that. But it can be messy along the way. I understand that. And 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. The other services of the Haven are not. Those are food shelter. We don't ask very much when we come to the food. We collect some demographic information just so we can do analysis where are people coming from. That's how I know that 60% of the people in the food shelter are from Vermont and 40% are from New Hampshire. We don't ask about your income really, other than people can point. There's a few items that we get from the state of Vermont that you have to be very low. You have to be low income to qualify for. But you can come into the Haven, and if you don't want to reveal your income, you can still access all of the food that we have. Same for the services that we offer during the day. People come in to take a shower. They use the bathroom. We've done that throughout the pandemic because people should have the ability to go to the bathroom and take a shower. And for a long time here, there was nowhere open. And I was going to be sure that we were going to figure out how to do that safely. And that was what we did. but you come to ask for help. They need money to do laundry. They need gas so they can go back to Connecticut, which is a true story that we get. And we're happy to put people on a bus ride several times. Yes, we'd love to get that bus ticket for you because you need to be back among people who will help take care of you, because you burned every bridge that exists here in White River and in the surrounding area. So please, let's take that bus ticket and go. So we're really trying to have a welcoming organization, but we do insist on, we have kicked people out of the shelter because they don't follow the rules, or if they were the partner and became violent, or they threatened others, or presented a risk to themselves. We're not a mental health organization. We're a health organization. So we'll find sometimes that people can't be with us because they're not healthy enough, or they're not sufficiently able to manage themselves. So come by sometime. We can talk more about that, and happy to show you what we do. But we're kind of a welcoming place. But we want to be better at how we sit in the neighborhood and how that people feel still safe, including the schools. I mean, our kids we have in the shelter that go to the Hartford schools. We have the school bus drops off kids who used to live in the shelter, who now are in the community going to the school at the bottom of the hill. Drop them off for an after school program. Every day there's a school day. And so we have a lot of eyes on campus. Children are never by themselves anywhere. They're with the parents, or they're in the school program, they're with us. And then we have other eyes on. We're awake 24 hours. We would have 2 staff awake, additional staff if we had this building and we were running an overnight shelter. So we'd have 3 staff awake on campus. We pay close attention to what's going on. We talk to the HPD when there's someone that shouldn't be there. They talk to us a lot too. Is there someone you can help? So we have a good relationship with police and emergency services. When we have calls that come in, they're usually health related, not behavior related. But that's, anyway.
Any other questions from my fellow board members, statements before we continue? Yes, Olivia.
I just had another question about the Haven and what their typical operations are like, going off of what you had asked, Hava. In a typical winter, how many people are coming into your shelter? You had mentioned about 15 people per night, but what does that end up looking like across the course of an entire season?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Because while we were capped at 15 in the new building, we're looking at about 20, a little bit of room, but it's about the same. And not every night would be filled. Probably averaged in the last winter 12 over the course of the time we were open until March when COVID came. But over the course of the winter, that represented 80 some odd people. So it's not that people are there and they're there every night. They come and they go, and they have other places where they live or where they can crash, or they move about, they go back to Connecticut, whatever it is. So that's in this year, we get 1 call a night, at least, from people who are saying, I don't have a place to sleep. And right now we're saying call 211. If you're in New Hampshire or Vermont, then you can, and we'll, and that they'll put you up in a motel. But that's the ranges that, and we know that most of them are from Vermont. We don't know what town they're from. We just know when, we can see the area codes. But that's, so there's a need in the community, that is, can be addressed. And we think we do a pretty good job of it. And we'd like, the ability to continue to do that and do it well.
Thank you. Any other board member comments, questions at this point? Okay, Peter.
Just one comment, because it's been referenced a number of times already. The issue of sex offenders potentially being in the shelter. There is no prohibition in Vermont law for sex offenders being resident within any distance of the school. There's not a limitation, despite the public's perception that there is such a rule. However, the sex offender registry keeps, or at least the law requires that they keep meticulous records of where the people are living. And there may, in some cases, be a judicial finding or requirement of some kind that limits the sex offender's ability to live in some areas. But the mere fact that a sex offender is resident for some period of time in the Haven in of itself is not a matter that violates the law.
Hold on, Beth. Hava, and then I'll get.
Just got one last one, and then I'm gonna let other people ask some questions too. Thanks for everybody indulging me. This is for Mike Redmond again, and I'm thinking largely here about the impact in the school district and the school environment. I'm curious about the number of people served in and out in a normal weekday at the Haven, because in my mind, I'm thinking about comparing whatever that number is to an additional 20 beds, which is what you're proposing. And I think that's sort of what this discussion comes down to, is how many people are already being served a day, and then how much more impact would an additional 20 people have who could be in a low barrier shelter. Because if I'm understanding correctly, there's already very low or no barrier to people who are coming in during the day for a lot of supported services. So I'm trying to wrap my head around the measured impact of what this additional space would be. So Mike, if you don't mind indulging me.
Yeah, another good question. So a lot of the services that we provide now, we're not going to be expanding those. We're just going to we want to do them in a different location where we have more room to do that. The organization has grown a lot prior to my arriving, and so we were really cramped for space. And so we used to operate the seasonal shelter in our dining room, which became then a dining and registration space during the daytime. So that was 15, and we might go to 20. So that's an increase of 5, if you think about it that way. The walk-in services that we have now, there are 3 staff who provide that in the burn building, but in with really no storage, really not great facilities during the day, one shower that we can provide, challenged to do that. So we just want to move them into a new space, but so I don't anticipate more people coming for that service. We'll just be able to have a place where people can sit. And I'm doing a little bit of separation, people coming for different reasons, people coming for the food program, people coming to meet with the service coordinator, or, to work on, which they really don't have any space now to work on housing applications or things. So it's a little bit challenged, but it's moving the service that's now in burn into a new building. Maybe it increases a little bit, but there's probably 20 people that come a day, for that. The food it's now will be centered in burn, and that's not going to change. And we average somewhere between 60 and 80 on a typical day of families, individuals, households coming for food. They stay where they are, though we'll provide some meals we brought over to the new building. We'll plan to have a kitchen there as well to make some, but really for reheating food. So the net increase will occur, but I think it will be modest in by and large. I think mostly it's that we'll have staff who don't have an office, or they've been tripling up. I'd like to be able to give that. We have no break room, so no place for staff to have lunch together. I'd like to, I'm trying to solve a few things with the new building. A place, where all of our staff could meet as our community to have a staff meeting. We don't have any place like that. I could do that in the new building on the first floor in the center. 4 times a year we close to have that. So there's, so I'm trying to do a few things with this. like any organ, and anticipate what might come in the future. Solve the problems we have, anticipate the future, and we'll see how that goes. But Beth wanted to speak. I want to step back.
Okay, thank you. So I'll call on Carrie. Oh, go ahead. Are you all set, Hava?
Yeah, I just said thank you.
Okay, I'll call on Carrie and then you can go back, because that way everyone has had their first chance.
Russ, we have a few.
Okay, so we can get everybody, but we'll get to them too. Thank you for reminding.
Hi, good evening. I'm Carrie Heavysides. I live in White River Junction on Worcester Avenue. And my husband and I have one teenage daughter at home. And we're pretty new to this, actually, which I'm kind of surprised. I guess one of my first questions is like, where is this in the planning stages? Like, I'm not even really 100% sure yet where things are. I've heard people say like, oh, this is a done deal. And maybe someone can speak to that. Just would like some clarity on it. But, you know, my husband and I really support the Haven. We love the Haven. We love what it does. We believe you do it and you do it well. And we like to leave things to the professionals that they're trained in. So I want to just, you know, put that right out there. This is an important matter, and I still trying to figure out where I stand on the idea of a low, no barrier shelter. It's actually a new concept to me, so I'm still finding my way in that. My knee-jerk reaction is I want to echo what I've heard Beth and Deb say as a resident close by. We're out and about a lot. I think my dog is probably one of the better walk dogs in the town of Hartford. And I walk her at all hours. And my daughter rides her bike, and we're just out neighborly. And we have great concern for already what we see in our neighborhood. I would actually like to see almost all the neighbors' experiences written down. I did see some on a letter from the Demers Street kind of side of the neighborhood. I think us down on Worcester could add our stories, and I'm sure Wilder and Hanover Street could add their stories. I think there's value in these individual experiences that we're having. You know, I don't let my daughter ride her bike anymore. She's 13, and no, you're not riding your bike down. No. She did once, and it was actually the first time she went down to the thrift store, very proud of her new independence. And thankfully, one of my nieces drove by and saw my daughter's bike at the thrift store. And my niece called me and said, Auntie, is Olivia at the thrift store? I said, yeah, she's so proud of herself. So I just want to let you know there's a man having a real hard time at the bus station right now. And he's just ripped his clothes off, and he's having a real hard time. And I just thought you'd want to know. And sure enough, he was having a very hard time, and he actually ripped a big branch off the maple tree. And so I had to go down and escort my daughter home a back way. And that's just one thing. I'm going to need a lot of convincing that this is a good location. I don't see it as a good location, and I don't.
30 seconds.
Thank you. I don't want to take it and say it's not the right location, but I'm not feeling it. It's my knee jerk. It's a school district. There's kids everywhere walking around, and I'm sorry, I'm a mom. We're about the kids. So that is ultimately number one. I want to see the unhomed homed and cared for, of course. I'm a decent human being.
Time.
I want to help our children most. So I appreciate that, and look forward to being a part of the process.
Thank you, Carrie. All right, so I haven't forgotten you, Beth, but we'll take the people online.
Alex Belenz.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thanks. My name is Alex Belenz. I live in White River Junction. I just had a couple thoughts to share. One, so when I talk with teachers, particularly at the middle school, because I know a few, I'm struck by how many students there are actually dealing with housing insecurity themselves. I know of at least one teacher who has had students sleep on their couch because they didn't have a place to go that night. So this is an issue that touches every corner of our community, including our students, and one that we must deal with. I think we do that by expanding shelter capacity and putting people on a path to permanent stable housing. I think if there are issues that arise there, I think we can trust that the Haven and St. Paul's have the resources and professional staff to address them like they have in the past. But I think we need to get something done. And I think this is as good as an opportunity as any. And as Danny mentioned before, I think the Haven is an asset to our schools, not a threat in terms of the services that they provide to folks in need. In terms of low barrier shelters, I did some looking into if there were associations with low barrier shelters and increased calls for police service or criminal referrals in different communities. And every example I can find where this has been studied, there's been basically no association. That's examples from Oregon, North Carolina, California, Washington, DC, Washington State. In some of those cases, calls for service actually went down as a result of there being more services available in those communities. And the organizations that are providing those services, they have tools and resources to provide the support that residents need before they're have an involvement with the criminal system. And as far as location, I do think we need a location where clients can interface with the existing Haven Inn services, where they can access public transportation and use that to get to services and employment opportunities. This can be critical to helping people improve their material circumstances and getting on a path to a more stable life. And I think to suggest that the shelter go out in a non-residential area, which does not have public transit access, doesn't have proximate access to services, I don't think really can be treated as a serious solution. We need that connection to the existing programs and services. So I'm supportive of this proposal, and I think we need to put some trust in the staff and professionals that St. Paul's and the Haven have at their disposal to make this work for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. We have somebody else.
We do. Will you add Hannah Old, please?
Yes, this is Hannah Old, and I live in Wilder. One of the recurring themes that I've heard throughout this meeting and also on Facebook where these things have been discussed is the classic issue of not in my backyard and a lot of fear about the excess crime and things of that nature. One thing that the people who are on that side don't take into account is that the Haven is already there. And so you already have a lot of that impact on the community. And in addition, a lot of people that are camped illegally are camped illegally over in that general section of town. So realistically, by bringing them inside, it's probably not going to hurt the town that much. The other thing that I think that this group needs to take into consideration is the issue of human dignity. It's very easy to forget that people that are homeless are actually people. That people who are living on the edge need to have a voice. And having them stay in an area where there are already the services and where you're already on a bus line and where they can try and rebuild their lives with a little bit of support is frankly very valuable. And so there really isn't a whole lot of point in making two separate sites, because then you got to do everything on the double as far as extra police patrols and staffing and things like that. So we're better off just increasing surveillance at times, for example, when school is getting in or letting out, where there are higher risks in terms of people hanging around. We can patrol the cemetery. So those harms that you guys are so worried about are fairly easy to mitigate. But if we
30
refuse
seconds.
to if we refuse to
Okay, 30
undertake,
seconds.
right, I heard you. So if we refuse to undertake this project, then not only are we kicking the can down the road, but we really are forgetting about the dignity of people who really need our help and need it as soon as possible.
Thank you, Hannah.
You're welcome.
Any?
I have two.
Two, okay.
Heidi?
How's that for a speech?
Very good.
Hi, my name is Heidi Ducha from White River Junction, Vermont. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I attend a lot of select board meetings, and I have been involved in the homeless community and have walked into a couple of homeless encampments. How do I go about this? I agree that they need to go forward with a low barrier, no barrier shelter, but this is not the place to have it. And I approached the select board on the encampments and how an individual in our town was going about helping these people. How do I say this? I was more or less put in my place that I was approaching it in the wrong manner because it's a very sensitive subject, and the individuals living within these encampments, they do need homes, and we do not have enough low-income housing within our town. And Mr. Majors did put on a very well organized meeting on low-income housing, and it is true, we do need it. And they do need a low barrier, no barrier shelter for these individuals, but putting it in residential area and within school districts is not appropriate. It needs to be off the beaten path. It needs to be completely away from everyone. It needs, they can bring buses in to take them to doctor's appointments. They can have it scheduled where they can go to get groceries or personal needs or anything else. They can bring the services to them, or they can transport them to the Haven as needed. They can do that, but to put them in a residential area where more harm will be done than good is not the way to go about this. I've been at this, and I've been at meetings, and I've brought this to the citizens of Hartford's attention for a long time coming. I myself never saw myself walking into homeless encampments and getting involved in this, but I'm doing this for the good.
30 seconds.
I'm doing this for the good. I'm doing this for the good of our community and the safety of our community. I'm not doing this to put people down or make people feel bad. I'm doing this for our public and for our people. That's all I have to say. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. I will take anybody else in the crowd who wants to speak. Please identify yourself.
Cassandra North. I live in White River Junction. I, as a teacher and community member, want to voice my support for the project. We have so many students who access the Haven as a food shelf, as the shelter that's there now, and so many projects that go to donate or somehow help the Haven's mission. And we all know that there's a homeless issue in the Upper Valley. And no matter where you suggest it, people are going to be against this project because there's a huge stigma around people who are unhoused. I want my students to know better, and I want my students to be better. I want my students to recognize areas where they have privilege and do what they can to help. This project, I think, is a great avenue for students to see how a community can come together and truly act in the best interest of our people. Whether or not there's a no barrier shelter, these people are going to be in town. So why not provide them with a roof over their head, a place to be, because they're here anyway. And I think it's our duty to help them. And I think that we want our students to do the same. So I urge you to think about them as people and how our students and our community can grow and be better from this project.
Thank you, hon.
I guess I have to speak. My name's Marie Elvin, and I live right next door to the Haven. And I've used to work at the Haven, and I know they do wonderful things there. It's a great, I'm not dissing them at all. My concern has always been about the families there. I feel like they've lost their mission. Yes, they should be helping these people. They need help. Yes, they do. The families, having singles here in the district, roaming the streets and doing whatever they do during the day when they're not in the shelter, is putting the families and the single moms with their young children at risk. You can't control them when they're out during the summer, especially. There's like a swarm of them out there, and kids are walking to and from school continuously. I see the special needs kids walking today up the street, going for their walk and whatnot. And I'm all about the kids and the families and the single mothers that are struggling in this community. There's no doubt that the families, the singles, need a shelter. Okay, you put a shelter for singles in a school district for absolutely no reason. They're not going to be going to school. They're not going to be using their services. And I did have a question about the teens. I mean, teens fall right in there with families and children and young adults. There's the staff meetings. I did a tour of the Haven the other day, and they've turned where when I worked there, the whole cafeteria soup kitchen that they got set up there, which could easily be located at the Listen Center, is just taken over a lot of their space. I counted, they have about 17 office buildings, office space there for all their help that they have, which seems a little over the top for me. But anyway, I'm not the right one here. My personal opinion is that I had brought up the Brookside. There's almost 4 acres of land there. There's 67 beds in that facility, and they could certainly have plenty of housing for many homeless singles. And they have plenty of space to put picnic tables, horseshoes, whatever. These single people need something to do during the day besides roaming the streets. Let's see. And that's my biggest concern. I mean, I've always been about the families.
30 seconds.
And it was funny when I walked in there, they had all these wise domestic violence things there on the counter, which is great, but they are in fact having singles right next to vulnerable families and children. Thank you.
Thank you.
You add Michelle Valesky, please.
Hi there, Michelle Valesky, White River Junction. I'm a neighbor of the Haven, and I agree they do wonderful things. It's a wonderful organization. I was able to use a food bank during the pandemic because I was down to $100 in the bank and no food. And so I was very appreciative to be able to use the Haven. And a lot of my neighbors volunteer there and do work. I've heard a lot of people talking about community. And I'm just wondering what the definition of community is. When the person at St. Paul spoke, she spoke about the Haven community. And then I've heard other people talk about community. In my mind, community is when everyone comes together to think of a solution. And during this process, I felt like I wasn't part of the community. I felt like when the church in the Haven approached us, they had already made up their minds what they were going to do. And that, you know, I didn't have a voice in this, even though I lived 2 blocks away. So is that being a good neighbor? I don't know. It didn't feel that way to me. And I do care about this. As many people who know me know that I care about the issue of homelessness and I'm very passionate about it. But I'm disappointed in the town not following recommendations from the original homeless committee, where they recommended that there is no shelter facilities in Grafton County. And I'm wondering why other valley communities aren't working together with us so that all the services and the burden and the brunt of helping homeless falls on the town of Hartford. And in particular, some of the residents that live around Hartford, because it has not been fun. It has not been fun around here, and there have been numerous incidents. And I've seen an increase since 2015 when the emergency shelter was put into place. And I do have a question for Michael Redmond. Did you ever apply for
30
permits
seconds.
for that emergency shelter? And if so, where are they? Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. All righty.
There's a question.
Olivia.
Thank you. I was just going to make a quick comment. I have heard a lot of people tonight talking about the location of this new shelter and suggesting that it should be moved somewhere else further away from the school district and school zones. And speaking as a student of Hartford High School, I can attest to how valuable it has been to have the Haven in our community. Many people my age, 17-year-old, 18-year-old seniors in high school are relying on the Haven for a place to live, a safe place to be after school. And the fact that it is in walking distance to the school makes it all the more valuable to my classmates, my friends, and my peers. And it's important to remember that singles, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, the people who might be using this shelter are the same people who sit next to me in English class. And that together, we really are a community, and not just a community because we live together, but because we learn together. And we spend our days together in class. And having this facility here, having the Haven as it has existed in the past, has been incredibly valuable to my fellow classmates and I. And this location of the Haven is part of what makes it so crucial to the school. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, Ellie Dennison.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. My name is Ellie. I'm from Lebanon, New Hampshire, but I have been a past volunteer at the Upper Valley Haven. Again, it's very interesting to hear a lot of people say, you know, a better place can be found for this housing, or I support the Haven, like I support the Haven a lot, but, you know, not in my backyard. And I think it's really interesting that almost every person who has said this is a white woman. I just want to point that out. And also, if it's not going to be here, where are we going to put it? And I've heard someone say, well, let's not put it in a residential area. But from what I know, most of the Upper Valley is a residential area. Also, we're basing a lot of stereotypes and assumed characteristics of the homeless population. And I think this is quite unfair. And by being someone who is, I support, the Haven, but not in my backyard, we're maintaining and increasing economic and racial segregation. And frankly, it's hypocritical. And I find,
Excuse me, we're trying to keep this civil here, so
sorry.
please. Yeah, and she may not have heard the rules, and that's on me because I didn't enforce it. We had requested all Hartford residents have a chance to speak first. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to cut you off there.
Ooh, sorry about that.
Yep. John.
John,
can you all hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Okay, John, White River Junction. I'm so glad this conversation is happening. But something I keep hearing is this idea that by expanding to this new building, that somehow the amount of traffic and the occurrence of people who are unhoused coming into town is going to increase. And I just want people to consider that even if the Haven were to maintain or it possibly even reduce the level of service that it provides, it wouldn't reduce the frequency of people in our communities and on our sidewalks and in public spaces that we all share, people who are either in crisis or otherwise behaving in a way that alarms or concerns us or scares us. That is not going to go away. It would not reduce the exposure of children and teenagers to the problems of our community, which are going to become more intense, regardless of whether services that address those problems are available locally or not. And when you see a man at a bus stop having a hard time with his shirt off, he's a symptom of those problems in our communities. And his manifestation of that symptom is not going to go away, is not going to leave our neighborhoods. In fact, the only way to keep the situation from getting worse is to actively support engaging with these issues, engaging with solutions. A school district, a residential community, a town, a tax district, a municipality, these are all different ways to describe and perceive the same space, the space that we all share, that we all want to make safe. I don't say keep safe because right now, this space that we perceive as should be safe for our children is not safe for all of our children. It's not safe for all of the people who are in this community. If we want to make these places safe, it's counterproductive to avoid and ignore all of the issues that make us feel unsafe. All of us, each of us, including those of us who are in a crisis of housing or a crisis of income and finance, a crisis of relationship and of mind. As busy and burdened as all of our families are, I'm a parent here in Hartford too with a little girl. As burdened as all of our parents are, we can't keep our children safe without having a bunch of conversations about the underlying causes of fear and of violence and of insecurity, and a deep look at the services that we provide and support in order to address these issues. We need to think about how can we do more, not only as nonprofits, but as a municipality, as a school district. We actually need to engage these issues if we want them to get better. Thanks. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Leslie Barber.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
I know this sounds really masculine for Leslie Barber, but this is her husband, Tim Ferriel. Sorry, I used her stream. Really appreciate all you guys being here and being involved in this discussion. I think it's a really incredibly difficult, tough topic. I think it's really hard to find balance. I think we are a caring and genuine community and trying to kind of figure out our way through this challenge. I feel a little bit like Carrie did earlier, where I'm kind of torn between sort of my personal interest and my greater interest and caring about our community. Obviously, we have some problems that we have to find a way to support people in tough situations. A couple summers ago, we're up here on our hill and it's my house, and I feel very privileged and fortunate as a white male with my family and my house and my life. But we dealt with some pretty traumatic situations here with people down living in various encampments and shelters with barking dogs and drinking and fights and fires when the forest was very dry. It was not a good summer. It was very traumatic for our neighborhood for a number of reasons. So those issues are real for the people who live in these communities and have to face these kind of experiences. The flip side to that for me is, I worked at Listen for a fair amount of time. I understand poverty. I understand challenges. I understand people trying to find their paths. And yet I felt in many of these situations, they're not getting the full support they need, the full programmatic care they need. The Haven is wonderful. They do amazing work. Nobody would deny that probably tonight. But I don't really have the answer on how you, the Planning Commission, the town, all of us figure out what works as a toolkit to support people out there. We don't want anyone out there in this night, a night like tonight. But we also want to have a safe and dynamic community that we all feel good about. So it's a tough one. It's a tough one. And I wish I could give you a magical answer tonight, but I can't. I think that everyone that's spoken tonight has spoken from the heart. I'm glad we're having this conversation, but man, this is
30 seconds.
This is a tough one for all of us, and we are a community. I like to think of it more as an Upper Valley community. Let's not restrict it to Hartford. Other towns certainly should plug in and be involved. And this may or may not be the answer, and there's some great people involved in this process, but I wish you well, and I hope there's some other ways that I can support you in coming up with good decisions around this process. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Leslie.
You're welcome.
Sasha.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. So my name's Sasha. I live in Wilder, and I'm a psychologist. And so it's been really interesting listening to everyone's testimony tonight. And it sounds like to me, people who have been saying that they support the Haven, but not necessarily in my backyard here, are all advocating for children and the safety of children, which I really admire. But what they seem to be advocating for to me are children who come from stable homes, oftentimes their own children who are more or less food secure, children who might have a roof over their head every night, children who have parents who are passionate enough to be here tonight. But we've heard tonight that several teachers who have spoken about how many students and children that they teach often use the Haven in their services, oftentimes many times. And I think we should think about what we're speaking about when we're defending children. And if we care about protecting children from sexual assault, we should really be bolstering the Haven with more services than they already have, and absolutely be supporting a low barrier shelter. And if we care about sexual assault, we should understand that that more people at the Haven are actually victims of sexual assault than are serial predators themselves. And if we care about protecting children in general, we should just make sure that there's a center that can provide a warm roof over their head. And I think that we need to just be reflective of this and think about kind of the community that we're trying to emulate for our own children and other children in the community. And so I think supporting the Haven and especially a low barrier shelter is in line with my values. And not only my values, I think it's in line with everybody's values that is spoken here tonight. It just takes a little bit of a reframing of what we mean when we're talking about these things. And thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Carol?
And then I'll get to you, Hava.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Carol Lane, and I am a resident of White River Junction. I'm also a member of St. Paul's Episcopal Church, and I'm a retired Hartford teacher. In listening tonight, I hear a lot of the people in the neighborhood who feel that they weren't listened to or a part of the conversation when this was going on. And for that, I'm truly sorry. I fully support this project for a variety of reasons. And I don't know if we could have some kind of meeting with the residents where they can actually talk about their concerns and feel a part of this project. I don't know how to do that, but I thought it was worth saying. This project is too important in my mind to just put someplace else. And that's really all I have to say. But I'm very glad I came tonight because I am hearing from many different people. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Okay, Beth, are you still interested in getting up?
I'm not sure, but I think I'm going to.
Fair enough.
I have to tell you that I'm very tearful right now. And so I hope you'll excuse me for that. But to be characterized as somebody, as people who do not care about the plight of the homeless in this area or people who are at risk is horrible. It's a disgusting feeling. Our families have lived here for a long time. I'm not only a mother of a child that's sitting in the hallway who has equal value to anyone in this room or anybody who's at the Haven. I am also a therapist and have worked pro bono for many people that have been referred to me by the Haven. I have worked tirelessly to help people assimilate into this area and to have people snap and click about the NIMBYs. It really is just so disrespectful. The Haven was plopped in our backyard, and we do support the work that they do. And we do see the value in what they give to the community, to children, to teenagers, to teachers, to teaching opportunities. I have not heard one person stand up here and say they're against the Haven, not one. But to be disrespected as a person who doesn't care or understand the plight of the many layers of homelessness, mental illness, and trauma really hits me in the core as a survivor of multiple traumas myself, generational trauma, and a person who works with people who also experiences these terrible things. It feels unfair. And it feels a bit like a character assassination, to be truthful. I really hope that we can all find a way to come to another solution that feels like it respects everybody's viewpoint. But to continuously hear this NIMBY, this not in my backyard, when it's literally in my backyard, and no one that I've talked to that's outside of this has experienced that, feels very disrespectful. We are not in my backyard people. We do care. We want people to be housed. We don't want people to suffer, but we also want our rights and our value to be respected. Yes, I am a white woman. I come from privilege, but it was not easily won. Our families have worked very hard for generations in this area. And I myself am on the verge of the poverty level, if you really want to know. So I just want to put it out there that I hope that when people take tone here as they speak about the people who may want a different location for the low or no barrier shelter, that you will do that with respect and think about, you know, who you're speaking against and how you're speaking about them, because we all want similar things.
30 seconds.
Thank you, Beth. And it certainly was not our intent to make anybody feel bad. And I think we are engaged in a back and forth respectful conversation. And there is no easy answer to this. So we're just gonna all have to try to work together, figure out a solution that works as best it can. It probably won't work perfectly for everybody, but we just have to see what we can do. Anybody else want to comment? Fellow board members, Hava, I forgot about you, sorry.
There we go. Now I'm unmuted. First, I have a question that I'm actually just going to ask rhetorically, because it's a bigger question. The question basically goes to Carrie and Beth and Mr. Leslie, who all called in, and I understand the point of actually having something not residential in your backyard, because I've experienced that in Hartford as well, in an area that was not mixed use as this area is. And it can be really upsetting and concerning. But my question to you think about is, and what I would be interested in hearing potentially, maybe offline, is your concern about having people have access there, or is your concern about a lack of supervision or support for people who are having services there, or is it even about a lack of supervision, oversight, kids who are in the neighborhood? I mean, I think that we're all talking about people who are using services, but maybe the conversation is bigger than just there being mixed use on our main streets, being, you know, Route 5 through Hartford. Maybe it's more about what do we need to support our mixed use environment in that area. And so that might be a bigger thought for all of us. And I have a specific question actually for Andrew Winter, if he's still there. Andrew still there?
Yes, he is.
All right.
Great.
My question is about the one-bedroom apartments. My understanding, I'm sorry if I have this wrong, but my understanding is that's a Twin Pines project. And so those units would be managed and overseen by Twin Pines. And I'm going to assume that your expectations of a Twin Pines resident is very different than the expectations of a Haven resident. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I'm happy to address that, or if you're done. I don't want to interrupt.
I'm done.
Okay. When somebody comes into Twin Pines, they are income certified. Their criminal history is run. And so we know, and often if they have a significant, if there's violence, that may disqualify them. If there is a violent criminal history and it is recent, it is likely to prevent them from obtaining housing. If they have a minor criminal record, then it's possible they would come in. Sex offenders, because of the funding that we're getting for this project that we are seeking, would not qualify. Section 8 housing is generally not available to sex offenders. We've had this issue come up at Parkhurst, kind of a funny story in the sense that, you know, some of the folks at CCBA were saying to me, oh, well, what about sex offenders? And I said, well, when we bought the building in 2018, we actually moved the sex offender out who was living there. And I say that only because sometimes people don't even realize they're sex offenders in the community. But, you know, if you're at Twin Pines housing, you don't, and you're a sex offender, you're not going to get in a subsidized unit like those that we're creating here. So there's a process. If people are engaging in criminal conduct that is unsafe or creates an unsafe situation, we evict, just like any other landlord. We don't like to do that. And the good news is we haven't had to do that over at Parkhurst. That's actually one of the surprising, you know, pleasantly surprising things is just like, I think we've had one in 3.5 years. So, so that's a good thing. And that's what we hoped, and that's what we hope to bring to Hartford. Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Yes, Olivia.
Thank you. Just to clarify, even though we're talking about this new building being low barrier, it's still going to be a Twin Pines property, and everyone in that building is still going to be subject to all of your expectations of tenants. Is that correct?
No, so let's just remember we've got the low barrier shelter, which is the Haven 2-story building. They'll run that. And then with their programming requirements. And then we've got the 3-story residential building, and that's permanent housing. And that will be managed by Twin Pines with enhanced case management services provided by the Haven. In addition to what we also offer, which we do have residential service coordinators as well. So they're kind of getting boots and suspenders, if you will, as residents, but that's a separate building. So 3-story building, 18 units, residential Twin Pines, 2 stories, day shelter or day station, and low barrier shelter, and that's the Haven.
Thank you for that clarification.
I'll take this chance to ask a question myself, and it can be, there is some misunderstanding about the scope of the project. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're talking about 2 separate buildings, and in the foreseeable future, there's no other buildings being added, correct?
Correct. That is correct.
Because I think part of the problem is due to the necessities of the permitting problem, the low barrier shelter in some of the permits was referred to as a future building, but it's all part of this same project, correct?
So let me talk a little bit about the permitting, and this may answer some of the questions that you raised earlier, Deb. And that is, you know, we really are just getting the permitting process started. So there'll be meetings in February, March, and April. February, we're going to be looking at something called a boundary line adjustment, where essentially a piece of the land that is currently owned by St. Paul's would be added to the current lot of the Haven. And then the remaining portion of the St. Paul's lot would be subdivided. And so the board, the planning commission will be reviewing those requests, as well as you know, what we call plan development. That'll be going on at 2 meetings, February and in March. And we're looking to build 18 units. We're allowed to build 14 units by right. So we're looking to build 4 additional units on that site to match the size of the project that we have in Lebanon. So that'll be the meeting for February. And then there'll be additional site plan meetings, site review meetings that will go on in March and April. And eventually the Havens piece will be in there too. So that we'll be talking about both the Twin Pines piece and the Havens piece. So lots of opportunities for input. But if you know, folks have concerns, please send them our way. If there are things that you're thinking about, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? I'm going to guess we've tried to think about a lot of things. We've worked various iterations of these plans over a significant period of time with architects and engineers, historic preservation consultants. It's not going to be necessarily perfect in everybody's liking, but we do think we've come up with a really good plan that hopefully a lot of the neighbors can get behind. So thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to point out a couple of things. I mean, I drive around town thinking, where could they put this single shelter, low barrier shelter? I know there's plenty of land up there by the Gilman office complex, not in a residential area. Also by the 25,000 gifts area, that whole block there isn't in a residential area. I could put a nice little campus there. I don't know where you plan to put people who are living in their cars and sometimes end up in the rest areas. That's an issue. It comes with the homelessness. The Gateway building, and when I worked at the Haven, they also were looking at land across from the police station, which I thought was a plight. They're all on the bus route. Of course, it's important for that. Services can go to these people. And I was just wondering about, in my mind, it just doesn't make any sense to put singles there because it's in the school area. And I feel families should be there and it should be a family complex. And the singles should have their own area because of the different issues they bring into the picture. And I don't know what the plan is for the future. I mean, homelessness is here to stay and it's bound to grow. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have a few people online.
Okay, so we'll take.
Singleness is not a disease. Thank you.
All right, so go ahead.
Add Michelle Boleski, please.
Hi. Once again, I would like the school board to remind people to be respectful. And I feel that the woman that just got up there out of turn is totally disrespectful to the process and the school board. And it's not okay. And what happens is we don't come together. We don't talk things out. This is characterized as a us against them. And it's really unfortunate. And it's unfortunate that someone had to make an assumption about my neighborhood, that it's comprised of all white women. It's not. It's a very diverse neighborhood. And I would love for people to take the time to talk to the neighbors because there are some great caring people here. And talking about NIMBY, the ultimate NIMBY is that the fact that all the board members on the Haven don't even live in White River. Anyway, I know I don't want to, but to me, it just is interesting. Because,
Michelle, I understand your point, but it's not really the appropriate forum.
I know. And so I'm complaining about people being inappropriate. I am, so I apologize. I really do. I apologize. It's just, I think it would be so great if people came together and talked about this. And I'm hearing like some such great contributions from people, and especially people that, that believe that the low barrier shelter is a great idea. And so I thank everyone from that. And I agree, I'm very conflicted. And I have, as someone else said, I have a different experience living here and seeing, but as John said, it's not going away, and it's a symptom of something bigger in our society. And it's going to take all of us to work together to solve it. So thanks.
Thank you, Michelle.
You add John, please.
Thank you. I had put a question in the Q&A that was, it was kind of a question to the board itself, but also to the attendees. So I don't think the attendees can see my question. So I just wanted to be able to read it out loud. I think because this issue is a we're debating whether or not the Haven should expand. And I don't think any of the, I guess, the complaints or the fears that have been brought forward today have anything to do with the Haven expanding. They have to do with how the Haven operates right now, what people are experiencing right now, last year, the year before. These are the conditions as is, not something that's going to happen in the future. So given that, what can we do as a community to make local families and residents feel safer if they're telling us they're feeling unsafe? I would love to ask the same question for the people that we're so afraid of. What can we do for people in crisis to make them feel safer? But I'll start here with the people who have the power, who have the voice, who have the ability to stand up and speak tonight. Genuinely, what can we do as a community to make you feel safer? What resources can we provide? What services can we staff? From both the school district and the town side, the municipal side, to make you feel safer. Like, why aren't we having that conversation right now? That part of what I talked about at the select board yesterday was that Hickory and a number of people in the community would like the town to conduct a community review of public safety, or actually to have an external partner conduct a review of public safety services and find out ways that we can make our services better. And I'm realizing, because Russ organized this conversation to happen before the school board, I'm realizing that this may be something that the school district can collaborate with the town on, because we also should be asking our school community, our school families, what's your experience of our safety services? Of course I'm talking about the police and the fire department, but I'm also talking about all of the other array of services, including the Haven. Like, what is your experience with these institutions and these organizations, and how can we improve the experience? I think it would be to the benefit of the whole community, for both municipalities to pursue that answer and to go out and conduct interviews with our community and figure out what we can do next. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Go ahead, yes.
Hi. I guess I would offer with the superintendent here, and really following up on John, the opportunity for conversation that I'd be more than willing and happy and really want to have with any of your administrators or principals or others who are concerned about safety. And if you feel that through tonight's hearing, some issues have come up that you feel need further exploration to find out what can we do, or that you think maybe things haven't even surfaced yet, I'd welcome the opportunity to come in with some of my staff who really do work with the population and explore that with you. And it's my place to apologize, but I'm really sorry, Beth, for what was said earlier, because we've had a couple of conversations now, and those have been very respectful. And even though you're very concerned, and I also want to continue to work with the neighbors that are around us in that community to figure out what else we can be doing to create a safer space, no matter what happens with this building and this service. So that's I appreciate Russ for Russell bringing this forward and encouraging us at the St. Paul's meeting to get on the agenda here. And thank you for our friends from St. Paul's for making that happen too, Anne particularly. So that's sort of my last comments for tonight anyway.
Thank you. I'd love to take all the credit, but no, I can't. Carrie.
Just real quick, Carrie, besides River Junction again. Thank you, John. That was beautiful. That was what I needed to hear. I didn't know I needed to hear it until I heard it. So the thought had gone through my head, like, could there be some sort of external outside the town come on, people have done this before, who could review our situation, you know, non-biased because they don't live here and they don't work here, all this. But that is kind of, I think for me, the heart of the issue is safety, and that I'm not living in a place right now where I feel very safe. And I see that with this possibility of growth will get worse. So that is, I think, for those of us concerned, I don't want to speak for everybody, but it really is, I think, the heart of the issue for those of us who are having reservations. The not my backyard thing, I'd like to just say goodbye to that. Can we please say goodbye to that? Because that is not the issue for any of us. I mean, really, we are all here for the same thing. I mean, we're humankind, right? We're both human and kind. I think there's probably out of 100% of us, 98% want the same thing. And so I just really appreciate what John said. I hope we can maybe follow up on how can we make this area safer. I mean, even with my concerns, when I'd call the police, they'd come, they're like, hey, Carrie, hey, Doug. I said, we can't do much. Sorry, we can't do much. You know, our hands are tied. I mean, what is this? So we want to see it safer. That's all. Thank you. Thanks, John.
No problem. Thanks. Yes, go ahead. And you'll let me know if there's. Okay.
Peter's had his hand up.
Oh, I didn't see you. Okay, so we'll have one member of the public, then we can do you, Peter, if you don't mind.
Deb White River Junction, and I know Carrie said she didn't want to speak for everybody else, but I wanted to echo that I agree with Carrie and that, John, thank you. That is, you know, like John said, these issues have already been, they're already here. And people are experiencing them in this particular neighborhood. You know, I care greatly about other people, and I just want people to know that I'm not someone that doesn't care about somebody else. It's embarrassing. I thank God every night that I have a place to stay that's warm and safe. Because I know there are people in our neighborhood that do not have that. But we also want to feel safe as townspeople living where we live. And we've heard tonight from those living in the direct neighborhood that there are concerns. So how can we address those as a community going forward? So I do look forward. I would love to meet with both of you and see how we can do that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Peter.
Yes, I wanted to respond in part to what John said, and he is both totally, completely right and addressing some things that are unfortunately beyond the school board's jurisdiction to address. The school board has no real role with respect to public safety or other issues like that. That is the jurisdiction of the select board, not of the school board. It only comes into our purview when public safety crosses into the area of what is going to affect our students in the school community in terms of the buildings, the grounds, and so forth. That doesn't mean we don't want to engage. It just means in some areas our hands are actually tied. So to the extent we can, we do wish to engage in that process, that conversation. And I'm not trying to avoid responsibility. It's just the way we're organized by the state and empowered by legislation, there are limits to what we can address.
Margot Howland.
'I live in White River Junction, and I'm
interested in this project. I have concerns about safety issues. And the question that I typed in, that I'll just recite from my memory, is I'm kind of wondering what this 3-story building and this 2-story building are going to look like. I think that the Haven buildings, the 3 Haven buildings, I think they're 3, are very attractive. They're aesthetically pleasing. You drive by them and they look pretty. They look really attractive. And I'm just kind of wondering if the new buildings will have the same architectural style or look something like they fit with those other buildings, if you can get what I'm driving at. Thanks.
You're welcome to respond to that, even though, as Peter indicated, that's really not the jurisdiction of the school board. I mean, unfortunately, that would be part of the planning committee discussion.
And as a former member of the planning commission for many, many years, let me tell you, they would welcome you asking the question at that forum.
Thank you. I understood that. I was hoping maybe the fellow from Twin Pines might say something about what the building's going to look like.
You can, if you.
Yeah. There is one design currently out on the street. Will it look like that at the end? I don't know. Maybe people will say, we want it to look like all the other buildings on the Haven campus. And it will, that is something that we'll be talking about with the planning commission. That's exactly the kind of conversations that we have with the planning commission. So
well, I'll be there. Thank you very much.
Please join us there. Thank you, Margot.
Kendrick.
You're muted, sir.
Kendrick, are you there?
I don't think so. Let me try the next person.
Yeah.
The other person just lowered their hands.
I guess I will throw out at some point, we all may be suffering from meeting fatigue. There's been a lot of great points raised, but I would accept or maybe give a 10-minute warning to make sure everyone is given a chance to speak before we call our meeting tonight.
Olivia's got her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. You keep moving on me, Olivia.
Thank you. I truly feel bad for the parents who have spoken today, talking about how they have felt unsafe or worried for their children's safety. I'm a student in Hartford High School right now, and I have been a student of Hartford since kindergarten, and I've really grown to love my community and felt incredibly safe in it. And so I'm quite sorry that you have not had the same experience with your children, because that is truly quite unfortunate. But I have seen as a student that many people who I go to class with feel safe because the Haven is there. It is a place that allows them to have shelter, to have food, and to have a place to stay when there is nowhere else that they can go. And for some of my peers, potentially a single shelter could be the only way that they are able to stay in school, because singles are high school students like me. They are people who might be taking a break before they go to college. And so I am really hopeful that everyone in our community can have the same safe experience that I did, whether you are a parent raising your child in the residential area of White River, or a single who is trying to stay through high school and living in the New Haven shelter.
Thank you, Olivia.
So Russ has Mr. Kendrick figured out his technical difficulties?
It does not appear so.
We do have someone.
We're gonna switch to Jess Bowen.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for holding this meeting. I came very late, and so I apologize. And I can't believe that you're still going and listening to people. So thank you for this opportunity. I do live in the neighborhood, and I have been very negatively impacted by people outside of the Haven. And I want to be clear that when I purchased my home, I knew very well what the Haven was, what the mission behind the Haven was, and I bought my home anyway because I share similar values. And I'm sorry, what has happened in the past year in my neighborhood is terrifying. And I've shared it, my story, and things that have happened to my daughter and myself because of people who are accessing the Haven. And so I'm wondering, I also really appreciate what John had to say. I am worried about our students. I am worried about our children who are passing by, but I also really believe in what the Haven is doing. And so I'm wondering if moving forward, part of the conversation can be what happens when people leave the Haven. So they leave in the morning or they're going there in the evening. It's those times that I'm most concerned about. It's not what's happening within the Haven walls, because I think they do a wonderful job. So is there a way to have that be a part of the conversation when they're at the bus stop, when they're across the street, when they're at the laundromat, when they're in my front yard? Because those are all of the people that are accessing those services. So maybe there's some way to bridge that. And I am open to the conversations, and I am grateful to those who are still here and having the conversation and being open to what we are experiencing and have experienced. So thank you.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. What?
Well, before we do that,
Okay.
I'll take a little executive license
You
as
won't make
chair.
one.
No, I wanted to say, to our school community, thank you for coming out and participating, in this event. We have been working very hard as a school board over the last several years to be able to create situations just like this, where our community can come together and work together to find answers to the problems that exist. Granted, there are jurisdictional questions and responsibilities, but at the end of the day, as has been said, we're all hurricanes in this room. And that's what it's really all about. We have the capacity as a community, and we've showed it time and time again, to reach for the stars. I see our kids doing incredible things. I see our community doing incredible things. Special thanks tonight to Russ and Hava, who have been working tirelessly on our community engagement. This is happening, and it's happening here in Hartford, because of their efforts. I mean, I won't take any more time to embellish that statement, guys, but I'm just so proud of you guys. They took this project, on in an effort to build our community and to make our jobs actually, better and a little easier, because it is all about community participation. We, as was said at the beginning, we'll look at how we can continue to engage, our community. And at any point in time, that we can, help in that engagement, we will, because that is part of our mission, as the school district, which also includes that piece that people have talked about tonight regarding safety, and that is a holistic discussion. So needless to say, we have to be part of that discussion. So thank you all. And I guess at this point, unless there's any other business to attend to, I would like to ask Russ if he would request that motion.
At this point, I'll request a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
So we have two, so we have a first and a second, non-debatable. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And thank you all.
Indeed. Thank you all.
everybody.
Good job. Indeed.